Today we talked about the disinformation space and what can be done more actually to sustain support for Ukraine, because we are on the bridge of the second wave of Russian invasion and probably a year and even more to come to battle and to sustain support. So the main insight I have from the whole conference today is that we need to talk a lot, not in between Ukrainians and not in between the people who are supporting us right now, for instance, our Polish friends, because we are really friends and it is proved not only by words but by deeds. Anyway, we need to talk to more people, not in the West, but also on the East, on the global South and everywhere in the world, because Africa, Latin America, they do have their record of history with Russia, with imperialism and any other stuff which could influence and even to say affect our relations and support for Ukraine. We need to keep this alliance for a long time, and it is of course hard because war is tiresome. War brings lots of negative things and emotions, and of course it is hard always to keep this support high, but we need really to talk and to explain more, probably put emotions a little bit aside, because everyone understands that war is hard. Of course, probably they cannot understand that much when being outside of Ukraine than inside. But anyway, we need to hear each other and to understand the arguments of any side and try to find the counter arguments to help people better understand our position and sustain support for longer.
I work as a strategic communications lead at Alenia International, which is the global international consultancy, and we do work a lot on identifying, tracking, analyzing and countering Russian disinformation and misinformation campaigns in Ukraine in particular, but also in the wider Eastern Europe. And what we have identified throughout our work in this part of the world is that the Russian disinformation campaigns are focused on different types of audiences, and therefore the different messages and narratives may differ from the audiences that they are targeting. To be very brief, there are four major types of audiences. That's the Russian society at large, that's the Ukrainian society, the West, and what we may call the global South, so non-Western countries that includes Latin America, Africa, Pacific states and so forth. And Russian disinformation campaigns since the outbreak of the full-scale invasion last year have been much more direct in terms of undermining the unity of the support to Ukraine, and also trying to lure away some of the non-Western states to support Russia. And there are some of the key narratives that are being used by the Russian propaganda machine. For example, the most sort of renowned and notorious one is that Ukraine is a Nazi state, as declared by the Russian dictator. The whole invasion of Ukraine started with the purpose of so-called denazification and demilitarization of Ukraine, while being a very broad goal that has no indication of how this could be defined. That's a very useful framework to say that whatever Russia does is fighting against the Nazis without backing up with any kind of evidence. But this seems to work in some parts of the Western world and also non-Western states. And I would also focus on the non-Western part of the globe, of this narrative that Russia has been using a lot throughout the year, which is that they're fighting against the West and not Ukraine. And this has all been framed as decolonization war against the Western powers, the Western imperialists and so forth. Again, there is no evidence to back up any of these propagandistic claims. However, that resonates a lot with the audiences that they are being targeting, whether it's in Latin America or Africa that has the very painful experience of colonial past.
The main narrative spread for international community are corruption in Ukraine, that Ukrainian government should not be trusted, and Ukraine sells Western weapon on the black market, and that Ukrainians stage Russian military crimes. So the idea is that Ukrainians are like Russians, so it's like some internal issue between Ukraine and Russia, which is not the truth.
The main lesson we have learned is that words matter, and that's why we have a chance to call Russia by the proper names. Because Russia is a new totalitarian country, Russia is a Russist country, so this is a kind of Russian fascism. Russia is a country driven by revisionism, and revisionism is a very dangerous idea to destroy international order, and this is the last moment we are able to talk about it very openly and seriously, and this is for us a very historical moment and very historical chance.
I think the most crucial thing which we should underline after that kind of events is that we have the common problem. The problem with our independence, the problem with our sense of being together, and we should acting to achieve a common goal, which is a future which is peaceful. And for us, for now, to both the nations, from the Ukrainian side and the Polish side, is to make a new wording to describe our tough history, to describe our new future, common future, and being focused about the present day, what we can do to each other now, because we in Poland understand well that the Ukrainians are fighting for our freedom also. We are supporting these efforts because we are next on the map. Also, we understand our situation and our environment, and we want to underline that the disinformation is aimed to put emotions between our two nations. So the most significant narratives, harmful narratives which we see in Polish infosphere are targeted to divide these two nations. They are aimed to attack the refugees from Ukraine at Polish side. They are aimed to disrupt the supporting chains which are from Poland to Ukraine, to supporting the war effort which is on the field. But we must understand that there are differences, the significant differences between the Polish infosphere and Ukrainian infosphere. The Ukrainians and the front line, not only in the field but also in the infosphere. So we should understand that the war at the infosphere has taken the long period of time. It starts before 2014, and it would be continued even after the war at the field will be ended. Hopefully it should be soon. We keep fingers crossed to that solution, and we stand still, and we want to support Ukraine also from the efforts from the Polish side, like LASK do at the Polish infosphere.
We should speak more about Russian narratives, because Russian propaganda, like a hydra, with a lot of heads, and this heads is aimed on demoralization of societies, to make for Ukrainians a very bad image, reputation. So we should show how this work, how this propaganda work, why people and in which way people take it.
So what we do to counter those efforts is, again, a multi-pronged effort, from training journalists, from building awareness through the communication campaigns about the the fakes and the misinformation that Russia spreads, all the way to pre-bunking those narratives during the mostly politically charged events, whether it's elections or some kinds of offensives on the front line of Ukraine. And ultimately the end result is to build the resilience of the audiences that we work with to be more immune to Russian narratives and disinformation.